The team name. All right. We're called the. You know, made a lot of friends. You know, had some good experiences. But yeah, I haven't really had any previous MOBA experience to say. But I do
Right.
like Pokemon Unite a lot. Yeah, really fun game.
Right. And yeah, it's nice to have you back on this podcast this year. I mean, last year was the first year of Unite Championships, and now we're going into the second year. I think it's a very exciting year. There's a lot of different changes coming in. But I think one of the main changes for you this year is that you are now a competitive coach as well, right? So like I think that sounds really exciting because it in Unite there are players who are also coaching, and I think it's a very interesting place to be. And yeah, I think today we just wanted to find out a little bit more, what it means for you to be a competitive player as well as a coach as well.
Yeah, I think the coaching thing is sort of a recent, I guess, addition to what I want to do with the game. I
Mm,
think there was a lot of time in the off season, after regionals last year. So we,
right,
we
yeah.
competed at regionals, my team. There's a lot of time, I was just thinking about how do we make the OCE region more competitive. We saw
Right,
OCE's performance at Worlds. Iceland was the OCE representative.
right.
At NA, EU, all these teams really dominated, I guess, Worlds, right? So I think my thought process on playing, an OCE regularly is how do we make like OCE better, because we want to send the
Mm,
best players, we
right.
want everyone to improve, like we want better competition, right? We don't want to be, that small region that sends one team a year, and maybe we do well, maybe we don't. But that was the whole, I guess, intention of maybe trying to like start up some kind of coaching for the
Right.
for the players here in OCE. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Iceland did have a very good showing for the OCE region, and I think, yeah, like you said, like NA, there's a lot more coverage over it as well. And I think now we have the ACL in Asia, so that's a lot of visibility for us here. And for OCE, what I know is that you guys are a very tight knit community, and that has been made known since the start of Unite, even before like the competitive scene kind of opened up as well. Um and it's nice to see, like, you coming in wanting to make it kind of like bring up the competitive scene in OCE. So but also, yeah, I guess what I wanted to ask is also like, what do you feel that you can bring to the table as now a coach to Unite and not just a player?
I think I can offer a few things. Obviously we had the map change in September last
Right.
year. I think before the map change, the game was played in a very straightforward way. Like you go to
Mm.
Dreadnought, you take Dreadnought, you win Dreadnought, or you lose Dreadnought, and the games are much more difficult, right? But with the new map change and like how the games are played, there's a lot of decision making that comes
Mm-hmm.
into how you play the game. I think most of this game is sort of depending on how well you can make decisions and like how
Mm.
good your decisions are in comparison to the opponent's decisions. It's not something like that's, I guess, intuitive to a lot of people. A lot of people sort of just play the game, have fun with it, but aren't thinking, I guess, logically in a decision making way. Like, how do I make the best decisions? Like, what is the best risk slash reward for this decision? What are the outcomes? What are the consequences? Those sort of
Mm-hmm.
things. I mean, having played like VGC, so VGC is all about like win
Right.
conditions. Like
Yeah,
you have to
yeah.
analyze the state of the game. Like you need to know what the board is like. In Unite, it's the mini map. Like what vision do you have? What are the objectives? Like what are your levels? What are the opposing team's levels? Um, like
Mm.
that's the game state. A lot of
Right.
people struggle, I think,
Yeah.
in OCE, like specifically because I know them a lot more than sort of other regions. Like they struggle to analyze, the game state and make decisions based on that. So I guess my main point is like I understand the game fundamentally
Mm.
and know how to play to win conditions. And that's sort of why I decided to bring this coaching to the table and maybe help people out.
Mm, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like for me, when I first tried out VGC when I got Scarlet and Violet, it was like a whole new ball game, and it was very hard to understand. And I definitely see what you're talking about. And with your experience in VGC, being able to kind of bring it through to Unite is definitely a strength that you have. And we definitely see that in your plays as well, right? I think not just your performance in the regionals last year, but also in like all the community events that were happening in OCE. I think like the Ground Zero Cup as well as the Bandit Cup, we definitely saw like how you kind of brought your team together and how you kind of are known to do things very methodically. Um, yeah. But okay, so now are you now that you're a coach, are you still intending to be a competitive player for UCS this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the coaching thing is a little bit separate. Like I still do want to compete this year. I think before UCS was announced, I was sort of debating on, what the
Mm-hmm.
best plan was for me. We hadn't really heard any UCS news. We didn't have anything honestly, so that's the whole reason I sort of looked at coaching. But
Mm-hmm.
as soon as UCS was announced, I was actively looking for
Mm.
players that I'd want to build a team with or play with and compete for OC. And especially because there's two slots now for OC, so I
Right,
think
yes.
it's going to be a lot more competitive. Yeah.
Right. So any special dibs on who your teammates might be, or like have you guys already formed, or is it still in the works?
Uh, it's a good question. We have a team. We haven't really announced it or anything. I was thinking maybe I announce it here, maybe I announce it after
Oh.
the podcast. I don't know.
Okay, we'll
There's
leave
there's
it
a
up to you.
there it has something to do with the Bulbasaur
Oh
and
yeah.
and a Heracross. Those are very very important Pokemon in our team name.
Right. Okay, yes. I saw the gifs on Twitter, but I have no idea what the context is. I saw someone else also post the Heracross. So maybe a little bit of idea there, but not entirely sure what you guys are planning. But that's definitely nice to know. Colleen might be trying to say something. It does.
Bulbasaur does look kind of juicy, doesn't he?
Yeah. Spill the tea if there's any.
The tea? No, no, no,
No
no.
tea? Okay, no tea.
I
But
mean,
yes,
there's no tea, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I
okay,
think
we'll
for
get
sure.
there. We'll get there. We I'll keep a lookout on Twitter, or like maybe if you want to say it on this podcast later, it's also going to be fine. Um
Yeah, for
so
sure.
in this case, since you are intending to both be a player as well as a coach, how do you balance the multiple roles that you have, and as a competitive player you kind of want to be the best, but you're also coaching other people to kind of be better. So how do you kind of just balance that a little bit?
I think because UCS hasn't started yet, I haven't faced that dilemma
Right.
yet. But I have done some, some mod reviews for different teams already. I think it's interesting. Like I'm gonna analyze it in a like very objective way. Like I'm not gonna force my own opinions on the game, and their team.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a difference, I guess, between like team coaching versus individual coaching. Certain players might want certain advice, but then there's
Right.
teams that have just started up in OCE that need some
Mm.
assistance, some guidance. They haven't really played competitive before, so those sorts of things come before actual competition. You need to learn the fundamentals of team play before you
Right.
can
Yeah.
actually compete, right?
Yeah.
So that's
I
yeah, it's not really a challenge yet, but we'll see we'll see how it goes.
yeah, I definitely agree. Like, even ranking is very different from scrimming with teams that are playing at a very competitive level. But especially, it will be especially hard if you don't even five stack to begin with. Like playing solo queue, playing trios is going to be different, so much more different from if you play five stack in rank, and scrimming other teams as well. So I definitely think with your experience of competing in the UCS 1 year, like last year, and now you can kind of bring that experience to them, and it's nice to know that also that there are people still kind of joining the Unite competitive scene in the OCE region, and I think that's really nice to see as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new teams in OCE that obviously don't have that experience yet. The competitive
Mm.
experience. Last year, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but last year UCS was it was brutal. Like it was a grind. Like you can't really compare it to ranked. Ranked
Right,
is
yeah.
ranked is very different from like actual competition. There's a lot of high stakes moments in the games.
Mm,
One or two mistakes here and there can just the whole game can be completely opened, or you can lose the game off one or two crucial mistakes. Especially
mm-hmm.
with how Pokemon Unite works, and
Yeah.
Rayquaza and Zapdos, I guess in the previous meta. I think my advice really to those teams would be like, don't underestimate UCS. Like, don't think just because you're doing well in ranked right now
Mm,
means you're going to be doing super amazing in UCS, because like the teams are really focusing for UCS, and we haven't seen it yet. But yeah, once UCS does start, it's gonna be brutal. Yeah.
right, yeah. And I think it's also crucial to note that like different regions come up with very different kind of ways to play the game. And you don't really get that much experience until the UCS Worlds itself. I mean, you get to watch the videos and stuff, but until you actually face them, it's very hard for you to actually say that you know how to kind of respond to that. But yeah, I just want to bring us back a little bit to the OCE region a little bit, right? Like you were saying that there were new teams coming in, and there are still teams that I think were quite prominent. I mean, Iceland just released their lineup as well. So what do you feel like is the direction of Unite for like the OCE community at this point?
Um. So we have I guess to give you some context, we have a community tournament that is running at the moment in OCE. It's called the
Mm,
OCE Summer Showdown. And for this tournament, there's a lot of new teams that have been
mm-hmm,
formed. A lot of people want to play in a fun tournament, and maybe experience what competition is like. So, these players are new to the game.
mm,
Not really new to the game, but new to competition, really, right? And I know you mentioned Iceland. Sort of, they just released their lineup.
yeah,
It's good to see them back. They were,
yeah,
I guess, the pinnacle of OCE last year. So, I think there's going to be a lot of competition, especially because there's two slots up
mm-hmm,
for
mm-hmm,
for competition here in OCE. Everyone wants that number one spot, and everyone's going to go for it. But I think the two slots are really going to be like it's going to be a crazy competition. There's I think there's some teams that have a lot of potential here in OCE. They just need to play a little bit more together. I think work on some stuff. We see teams on the ladder all the time, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
whether or not they will compete in UCS is yet to be determined. Until that day one qualifier, and we see the battle fight. That's the only
Right.
time we know like who's actually going to be competing. Um, but I think there's definitely some powerhouse teams that will show themselves in Feb and March.
Mm,
But once we lead up into Aeos Cup in April, that's when things are going to heat up. But
yeah.
I do think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Mm. Yeah, I think OCE has been like this region that doesn't have that much visibility even throughout the entire year last year. So I think watching you guys play since March, you guys do have like very interesting metas that can be quite different from like the other regions. So where do you guys actually get the inspiration to, or what do you think the OCE play style is like?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think the OCE player base, last year everyone took inspiration from NA, the whole
Mm-hmm,
1-1-3
mm-hmm.
meta, solo
Right.
top lane, three in the bottom lane, like everyone took inspiration from that for a couple of months. And then Aeos Cup happened. So Aeos Cup, so my team, we had two people from I guess Singapore on our team. Like they weren't from like they're from
Right.
Singapore, but they were living in OCE, right?
Tofu's.
So we had their insight into like what the C meta was like, and this was all before Unite API existed. Like Unite API was in
Right.
its infancy. Like we couldn't scout teams or scout what different regions were doing back then, unless we actually queued into them or we had
Mm,
people in the know. So yeah, back then NA was like a huge meta inspiration. But since that happened, and since Unite API has sort of come out, I think a lot of teams took inspiration, I guess, last year from like Japan, EU. Like there's a lot of copying strategies, experimenting with different stuff. But right now, with all these new players in the meta, like they're not super competitive yet. So I don't think there's a whole lot of scouting
mm,
going on. So a lot of the
Right.
picks right now are mostly comfort picks, and I guess
Mm.
I would say 1v5 characters, if anything, And I'm specifically referring to this Pokemon called Delphox. Delphox. It's really bizarre to see. Delphox is really really popular here, but it's not popular in any other region at all.
Right, yeah, actually, I'm not sure if you watched like the previous week's um ACL, but yeah, Delphox doesn't really pick that much. But I definitely can see where it comes in. I think it was really popular when it first came out, at least for like my region in Asia, where Delphox as someone that has a lot of crowd control and ability to do burst damage came in very strongly. And but I think right now they're kind of shifting a little bit towards still mobility and more durability as well. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see how like the different regions have different Pokemon choices as their top picks, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to watch, the past couple of weeks, or like last week's ACL, and then
Mm-hmm.
also some NA tournaments. Not sure if you've heard of like the Floatstone Invitational,
Right, right.
and what their picks were. Like Delphox, it doesn't even exist in the meta. Like it's not even close to like being picked, even 10% of the time. Whereas here in like OC, there's like certain players who are sort of known for playing Delphox, and like they they play Delphox basically. Like the meta here is really weird. Like I don't even know how to explain it.
So, but what would you think is like a reason like they would pick Delphox, or like they feel like Delphox is good for the meta? Like, what's the reasoning behind it?
Well, it's really weird to say it again, but so far what I've seen in OCE is people people are not using Sableye and Urshifu a lot.
Oh,
Um,
wow, that's interesting.
so I think people think Sableye is like a cringe character. So they don't use it that much. And there's not that many like very skilled Sableye players or Urshifu players here at the moment. I think Urshifu is criminally underplayed here. Like this
Hmm.
character is just insane, and you can see in ACL it's either first pick or first ban. Like
Yeah.
there's no exception to the character. Like it's just first pick or first ban. But here in OCE, like people don't even pick it. Like it's not banned or it's picked. Like neither banned or
Hmm.
picked. It's really funny.
That's interesting.
And I think like when you don't have a character like Urshifu or Sableye, Delphox has breathing room because
Ah, yeah,
Delphox,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
like if Delphox is allowed to play the game, Delphox is a really good character. But characters like Scyther or Shifu Sableye, they don't actually allow Delphox to play the game. They just one shot it, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the reason I think that Delphox is
Hmm.
being played here a bit. Like
I
people aren't
see.
using those characters that just dive Delphox and one shot it.
Yeah. Yeah, or like the dojo as well. I feel like dojo has been quite popular in my region. But yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely make a lot of sense. It's very interesting to see that you guys don't actually use that much Saber Eye. I feel like I've seen so much discussion on Twitter on whether or not this Pokemon is too overpowered. What do you think about like Saber Eye as a Pokemon so far?
Oh, Sableye. I like the character. Like when I heard Sableye was coming to the game, I was excited. Sableye as a supporter, an annoying supporter that gets vision everywhere across the map. It was super
Yeah.
exciting for me. Because I like playing characters that can just roam the map and do whatever. Things
Mm.
like Greed and Dodrio, Sableye.
Mm.
But yeah, Sableye is not balanced, and you can see it's not balanced based on like how people are playing it in draft mode. Again, just like Urshifu, it's either banned or picked straight
Yeah.
away. Like teams know that it's so overpowered and unbalanced that they have to pick it or they have to ban it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very true. But I'm just wondering, since we don't really have that kind of choice to ban it in ranked or whatever, do you feel that there's really no solution to this Pokemon? Like I feel like yes, it is kind of strong and stuff, but there are still ways that you can counter it. In my opinion, like anything with an AoE that doesn't allow Sableye to come in, for example, is something that automatically kind of counters him a little bit more. And even if a Pokemon is overpowered, do you think that do you feel like there's like a way that people can go about it, or should think about it instead of saying that this is overpowered, it's cringe, we should not use it?
No, I definitely think there is counterplay to Sableye. Like Sableye isn't like so overpowered that there's no counterplay to it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you think about it this way, when Sableye is picked, for a team, the other team, they have options, things like Blissey with safeguard, full
Mm.
heals, um, like you said, AOE, death ball lineups, like teams that are grouped
Yeah.
together. Like Sableye can't really impact teams that are grouped together, right? Because he can only CC one person or maybe a couple of people if he confuse raise or uses his unite move.
Mm.
But I think people are really not over here specifically are not playing it in ranked because they expect to either ban it or it to be banned, like first pick or
Mm.
first ban, sorry, in draft. But
Right.
that the thing is right. Even though Sableye is a little bit weaker into some of these AOE comps, he's got different move sets. He's got the feint attack move set. He's got the knockoff move, and you don't necessarily have to just confuse them. Feint attack gives you vision. If you have
Mm.
your own sort of like AOE or like hyper carry or something like Gardevoir, and you get vision for them, like they can play a lot safer, right? If you know where the opposing
Yeah.
team is. So it offers too much. I think like there's too much utility that it has, but there is counterplay, and you can't just expect to CC the opponent and win the game. You got to play a little bit
Yeah.
careful with it because it is a bit squishy.
Yeah. And I guess it's one of the Pokemon that is extremely useful in a five stack when you can kind of collaborate a little bit more with your team or like know what exactly you guys are trying to do with this Pokemon. If not, sometimes in ranked it's always like the Sableye is on his own trying to do his own thing and it doesn't really work out. And maybe that's kind of one of the reasons why it's not picked up that much in ranked. Unless of course it's a five stack. But yeah, you were also kind of talking about Urshifu. How do you think Urshifu kind of comes in to the meta, if not in OCE and everywhere else?
Well, Urshifu is probably the worst early game character in the game.
Yes, it is quite bad.
He- but the thing is, his power spike is level 5, and then
Yes.
once he hits level 5, yeah, he has unstoppable. He has
Yeah.
level 5 unstoppable, and I think 60% damage reduction. So Wicked Blow plus his ultimate, or his Unite move, sorry, that can basically one shot any Pokemon in the game. If you
Mm.
combo it with Energy Amp or Scope Lens or something. Um, he's just a one shot character that has unstoppable, and he has secure. He's very versatile in like how you can play him.
Mm.
And because he has unstoppable, he's useful against Sableye. So
Yeah.
if the opposing team picks Sableye and they haven't banned Urshifu, well, you're gonna pick Urshifu because like you can just unstoppable against Sableye. Um, I think we know like from the past, unstoppable is probably like one of the most broken, I
Yes,
guess,
it is.
statuses in the game. Bussy Safeguard is just so oppressive, and that's why
Mm.
Bussy is like one of the top picks as well. Like having
Right.
unstoppable, yeah. So Urshifu and specifically, like I think everyone in the world besides OCE is playing it. So I'm not too concerned. I think OCE will pick it up. They're gonna watch some tournaments, and as soon as UCS starts, like they're gonna realize, yeah, Urshifu is just overpowered. Like we need to play him,
Mm.
unless he gets nerfed to the point where he's unplayable. But I don't really think that'll happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's like looking at how they tend to kind of do fetches, that it's for sure going to stay for a bit, and then maybe if it does get too much, I still feel that it's kind of like a Lucario kind of Pokemon where the skills that it has is its asset, and even if they get nerfed, it doesn't matter too much because like of all of the statuses that you have, all of the mobility that you have with some of the moves as well, and I think it's definitely a Pokemon that is here to stay still. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty interesting for the new Pokemon that have come in, like Sableye, Urshifu. What do you think about Dragapult right now? Do you think it has a place in the meta, or is it just kind of very gimmicky kind of Pokemon?
I think Dragapult is a really fun Pokemon, but he requires a little bit more. I guess you need to play him more. You need a little bit more micro.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need more skill to play the character,
Mm.
and you need protection for Dragapult. I think
Yeah.
he's, if you think about him in essence, he's either a heavy ADC character like Cinderace, but just without mobility, or
Right.
he's or you use Dragon Dance, and Dragon Dance is more of like an assist character. Like you want to use the Dragon Dance to help your other teammates a bit more. Like Dragon
Mm.
Dance, Dragapult. cannot be the main carry of the team, if that makes sense. He doesn't have enough damage per se.
Mhm.
I haven't really seen it played in competitive yet. I don't
Yeah.
think it was picked much in last week's ACL. I think maybe one team played it. Um, it does struggle against CC, which is a problem.
Yeah, it
Things
does.
like Ninetales, Snorlax, Mammothman, all of these things just give it a headache, and it doesn't really have the mobility to sort of outrange them or like outplay them unless you have a full heal and Dragon Dance and escape from them, or Phantom Force away. But
Yeah.
I guess that sort of defeats the purpose of picking Dragapult. You might as well just pick something like a Mew that outranges all those characters already, or just another character with like dashes that can actually
Mm.
go in and go out.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I agree. We don't really, maybe it's because it's too new. We don't really see it in the ACL, and like what you said, it does kind of go down very easily, especially if there is any form of crowd control. So based on what you've seen from the ACL so far, what are your general thoughts about this year's start to Unite kind of competition?
I think the ACL is really interesting. Um, I think before the ACL, the only way we really had a grasp on the Japan, Southeast Asia, and I guess India meta was really through regionals or live streams from Aeos Cup. You didn't really get to see too much of it unless you queued into
Right.
them. But now we have like dedicated streams that shows us how these regions are playing, and what sort of picks they are prioritizing, what their meta is basically. And I think
Mm.
being able to see what their meta is opens up a lot of discussion, opens up a lot of counterplay and taking ideas from these different regions. So I like that we have ACL so far. I'm interested to see like what the teams do, in I guess higher stakes matches. Right now it's only the
Mm-hmm.
group stage.
Yeah.
Teams are trying to win, but I think they're also experimenting. It's really
Yeah.
early in the competition. Um, but yeah, I do think it'll be interesting to see how they play today, and then I guess
Mm.
for the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think so. There are like very prominent Pokemon being picked and banned, as you said, for the ACL. I think we talked about Urshifu being one of the most banned, as well as Sableye, just from day one's competition, and we have already started a bit of day two yesterday for East Asia. And today we're gonna go into day two of the Southeast Asia one later as well. One of the debates I think that Indie and I think Ice was having in one of the previous watch parties was on Mime as a Pokemon. How what are your thoughts about like Mime currently, and how do you think it stands in the current meta?
Mr. Mime, yeah, Mr. Mime was OP a few months ago, as we all remember. Uh, right now, I think Mr. Mime is in a solid position. I feel like the way teams are playing him at the moment is like a pseudo frontline slash supporter, because
Mm,
the power swap healing is really good. Like if you can get stacks and you're healing your teammates, you can just use confusion without the power swap, in the Rayquaza pit, get a lot of damage off there. But I think the healing puts it in a really solid position still. Like no matter
mm,
what happens to Mime, the power swap healing is what I guess will remain meta for him. He's gonna be allowed to continue on in this meta.
mm.
I know we have seen a lot of like different tank picks. Like people are playing a lot of Snorlax. I think I've seen Mamoswine picked a
Yeah.
lot. A little bit more than Mime, I would say, but I do think teams will explore Mime a little bit more. Just because of that healing aspect.
Because of the healing. And so far, based on what you've been seeing from ACL, what are your kind of thoughts about the meta, or how would you describe the meta that you're seeing from the ACL?
I think what I've seen in like maybe 3 or 4 games that I watched, or maybe 5 games, is Sableye's banned, or Shifu's banned, and then you have Scyther, Mew, and Blissey as like first 3 picks usually, or Snorlax. Like those 4 picks go, or those 5 Pokemon are like picked or banned like in the first couple of picks basically. and it happens like every game. I think yesterday I was watching. I think it was High Five, not
Right.
High Five. One of the Japanese teams, T2 or something. The draft was basically Urshifu Sableye Ben, Scyther, and then Mewlax. So like these picks being so strong, that seems to be the meta right now. You pick the strong picks and then build around them.
Mm. Yeah, I think yeah, it definitely feels a little bit predictable, at least for now. It feels like there are some very dominant Pokemon in the meta, at least from what I'm seeing in the Asia region and when I'm playing in ranked as well. Um, but yeah, I think as we are we're just starting out the year, and ACL is really just one of the first few competitions to kind of start it out, and then we do have all of the other UCS regions kind of competitions coming up in February. I think February opens all the way until Worlds in August. I think they haven't really released the details for the Worlds yet, but I think the regionals does end around June, and based on last year's one, there is a break in between that and the final event. So this year they actually said that there was going to be like a draft mode, right? What are your current thoughts about it, and how do you think this changes the way people kind of play competitively?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know the rules of UCS yet. They haven't released the full rule set yet. But
Yeah.
based on what is happening in ACL, I would presume UCS is going to be played, from February with draft mode. I guess the only issue I see with that right now is you need an admin for draft mode because the game crashes a lot, uh, and it's really buggy at the moment. So I do hope either they fix the bugs or there's some sort of solution because I don't know if every team in every bracket in the world can have an admin in it. um,
Right.
but in terms of the draft and how it affects people playing the game competitively, yeah, I definitely think it's a huge change. Like it changes the game completely. Last
Mm.
year we saw teams practice like one comp, like their best comp, or maybe two comps specifically, but people would just spam one character because it was the most optimal strategy, to use these five Pokemon to, just play the game and, play their best and execute their strategies. But now you can't pick the same Pokemon, and you probably won't even get the same Pokemon every game. Like it's almost impossible to get the same Pokemon every game. You know, a lot of the drafting, I think, comes
Mm.
into how much do you know about the other team as well and their strategies. Like what strategies do they want to employ, and what strategies do you want to employ, and like how do you counter the opposing team. I think draft
Mm.
really changes the way you play ranked as well. Like you can't just play ranked normally now to practice. Like you've got to think about, okay, these are some Pokemon I might be able to get on the draft, or like if we get these Pokemon in the draft, how do we play it? Because there's a big difference between changing up your jungler, or changing up your support. The way you play is
Mm.
is very different.
Right. And since it is something that is new to Unite, and you were talking about how there are a lot of people trying to get into competitive, how do you think like these people who are new to drafting and new to competitive Unite could kind of approach pick and bans?
Well, I think if you've already been playing a lot of Pokemon, it won't be too much of a problem for you. But
Mm-hmm.
for the people that have, I guess, been one tricking or picking maybe one or two Pokemon specifically in ranked, it's a little bit more difficult. You've got to know how to draft. I think in OCE specifically, like teams don't really know how to draft yet.
Mm.
I think people have to scrim a lot in the draft mode to understand, what sort of the best picks are, what the draft order should be, like which picks do you pick when.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of nuance that goes into it, and it'll come from experience. Most players don't know at the moment. Draft right now it feels a little bit straightforward. Based on what we've seen in the ACL, like the picks and the bans there. But different patches will affect how the draft is played as well, and
Mm-hmm.
the strength of the characters. So yeah, I mean, for those new players, I would say like watch a lot of Unite. If you want to compete, you have to watch the game, right? You can't
Mm.
just sit and play the game. You got to understand how everyone else is playing the game.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think as you know we continue into the second year of Unite and maybe onwards, there'll probably be even more changes to how pick and bans are actually done. I guess this year is kind of a little bit more fixed already, but it will become like an additional complexity to the game, and I think it adds a lot more flavor that way as well. So once I guess the main group of people who play Unite are able to kind of understand that and are able to apply it to what we currently have, then we can have even more exciting modes coming in, especially with more Pokemon coming in as well. Um, yeah, and I guess in a sense, the next question that I kind of wanted to ask is like on the upcoming Pokemons that are coming up, Comfy as well as Zacian, which I guess you're very familiar with because of VGC, right? What are your kind of current thoughts on these two Pokemon coming in?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of Comfy. It looks like what I've seen so far is like I think people compare it to Yumi from I think League was it. But from what I've
Mm-hmm.
seen, like the gameplay looks really weird. Like you just attach to your teammate and then you don't even have to do anything. Like your teammate's healing, like you just press buttons. I don't know how strong it's going to be just because I think if you look at a Pokemon like Sableye, right? The
Yeah.
power of Sableye is that he's able to, or I guess any character with mobility in this game is the power
Mm-hmm.
of those characters is you're able to cover a lot of the map and show your map presence, right?
Mm.
And I think we know that vision is like one of the most important things in this game.
Yeah.
I think if you have a character like Comfy that has to stick with a teammate at all times, you lose out a little bit on that. It depends on how your team wants to play. Are you like a heavy team fight
Mm.
comp? Are you like a map control sort of comp? But the way the picks are right now, like Urshifu, Sableye, Dodrio, like these characters have so much mobility and like map presence, right? They're just on the map everywhere. Taking farm, taking objectives. Comfy reminds me of like Comfy reminds me a little bit of Blissey in the sense that you stick with your
Mm-hmm,
carry.
mm-hmm.
You protect your carry, and you sort of play with that. Um, I don't know. What do you think about Comfy?
I think it kind of reminds me a little bit of Clefable when it first came out. I like when I was looking at Clefable's skill set, I found it to be quite strong on paper. On paper, it seemed quite strong and very useful because like the whole meta was surrounding Pokemon with high mobility and with the ability of gravity to kind of just stop that. It seemed kind of overpowered. But the thing is, we don't see a lot of Clefables in ranked or scrims or even in the ACL at all. And I think it might be due to the fact that, like what you said, it doesn't provide as much utility as you want it to. The fact that Clefable is a hyper support kind of Pokemon, and it other than supporting, it isn't able to do a lot more than that. And Comfy does kind of give that kind of impression with the fact that you are always kind of sticking around with one of your other teammates in order for you to benefit from it. It's just very restricting in that sense. So but we definitely have to see, if it, because I mean Blissey is definitely one of the examples whereby sticking to somebody has a lot of good uses, right? But it's not just because of his ability to heal, but also the ability to kind of do a bit of CC when it needs to, and also being able to have a lot of durability, and also I think lastly having yeah, just a pretty decent move set that allows it to that allows it to fill multiple roles instead of just being fixed as one hard carry support kind of Pokemon. But
Yeah, I do think.
yeah.
Like speaking of Clefable, I do think Clefable is going to be seen a little bit more.
Mhm.
I don't know about Asia specifically, but I think in NA and like EU specifically, they've started playing a little bit more with Clefable. So the Floatstar Invitational was won by Nouns, and
Mm.
they played Clefable. I think, like you said about Clefable, Moonlight Gravity, you have to play it, as like a very hyper support, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think Follow Me and Draining Kiss allows you to be more it allows you to have more utility. Like you're not so much a
Mm.
support anymore as you are like a carry. And if you think about the supporters that are really strong right now, or that have been strong in the past. You've got Mime, Eldegoss. Like these
Yeah.
characters have a lot of survivability, a lot of utility, a lot of damage. Draining Kiss does damage as well now, and a lot of movement as well. Like Eldegoss had Leaf Tornado,
Yeah.
it has Pollen Puffs, survivability, shields, and then Mime obviously was broken. Like we already know how that story went. Clefable has one of the lowest cooldown Unite moves in the game. Its Unite move is really strong. Like 5 out of the 8 Unite moves that it can get are damaging moves that do a lot of damage.
Yeah, the percentages are
Hyper Beam,
insane.
and if you get Hyper Beam, you can almost one shot somebody with like Hyper Beam plus Draining Kiss. And Follow Me, I think, kind of acts like gravity in the sense that it
Mm.
micro CCs like somebody. Like if you follow me into a Snorlax, he can't actually use his moves. Like he stops people from using their moves, or maybe like he taunts them, right? It's a taunt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess we'll see like Comfy, like how it goes, because we all know like Blissey is really strong. It's got so much utility. Um,
Yeah.
I guess we'll see when Comfy comes out, like what teams do with it and what they pair it with. Like I imagine it'll be paired with like an all-rounder Pokemon that has a lot of sustain. Maybe someone
Yeah.
like Scyther, Urshifu, Azumarill, Serena, like those sort of Pokemon that can move across the map really quickly and have a lot of like healing and sustain.
Right. Yeah. I hope I do agree with what you're saying, but I really hope we don't see like the Venusaur Venusaur Blissey kind of combination again. Because that was very dominant at one point, and it still is, right? There are some teams that still choose to go with the Eldegoss Blissey into the Venusaur, and it's just awful sometimes to kind of deal with that. But on its own right now, without any examples, yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that Comfy is a great Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean we'll have to see Comfy. Like, can it be paired? Can you do Venu Blissey Comfy?
Oh
As the third
man,
support.
that sounds horrible.
Uh,
That sounds
like there's a
hard to deal with.
what about T-Tar? T-Tar. I think T-Tar
Yeah,
is a little bit.
yeah.
I mean, I've seen it played a little bit in the ACL as well. I think it's a strong pick
Hmm.
in draft. So we'll see what Comfy does. But in relation to Zacian or Zacian, however you want to pronounce it, this Pokemon, I'm not expecting good things. Like I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be too overpowered just because of the Pokemon that it is. You can't bring a Pokemon like Zacian to the game and have it be weak, if you get what I mean. Like it's a box legendary. It
Yes,
has
it
some of the
is.
highest base stats in the game. It's got really broken abilities and broken moves. Uh, so when it comes to Unite, I expect it to first of all be gem locked as usual. They're gonna charge you probably more than Mew. I would say it's gonna be more expensive than Mew. Mew is 15,000 coins. I expect
Right.
Zacian to be the same or some similar level. I expect it to be like really high attack, really high sustain, really high speed. It's just gonna be I don't know what to expect. I would say maybe akin to Hoopa. You know how broken
Okay,
Hoopa was when
yes.
it came out? Yeah, I think it's gonna
Actually,
be very similar.
I think what we're seeing now is like this trend when they release Pokemon. If it's a mythical legendary Pokemon, it starts off extremely OP. When we first started, we had Zeraora that was extremely strong with discharge, and then we have Hoopa that was completely abused by every single team upon release, and then we also have Mew that is still in the meta right now. So I looking at the trend that we're currently at, I feel like Zacian or whatever you call it is going to be there as well because it has that kind of expectations already set for it as one of the legendary Pokemons, plus the fact that it is one of the more prominent ones in recent years, right? Not just in the mainline games, but also in like VGC. So but as a
Don't
VGC
don't
player,
don't forget Urshifu. Urshifu is a
oh
legendary
yeah, Urshifu
Pokemon.
as well. Look at it. It's a trend. It's happening. I think Zacian is going to be the next OP Pokemon that comes out. So until then, everybody enjoy whatever you can. Once it comes out, we're gonna change the meta again.
They keep releasing these OP Pokemon, and like there's no counterplay to all these Pokemon. They're just the power just keeps going up. Like Mew was busted when it came out. Urshifu obviously insane. And Zacian, yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. like Koopa, Mew. Like there's so many Pokemon that are just so good in this game when they're on release.
Yeah, and so based off your VGC experience, what do you think Zacian is going to be like when it appears? Like what do you think the move set would be, or what do you imagine it to be as well?
Well, I guess Zacian's signature move is like Behemoth Blade, right? So I think that's either going to be one of its main skills or probably like its Unite move.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, so what Behemoth Blade does is as well it ignores or it doubles damage when you hit a Dynamax Pokemon. So I think they're gonna have to make it so that Behemoth Blade does something similar. Like maybe it ignores
Mm.
shields, or maybe it doubles in damage if the opponent has a shield, or some kind of effect in which you say it stays true to the
Mm-hmm.
move. You know, you can't just have the move in the game and not have it do something very good, right? It's like one of the best
Mm-hmm.
moves in the game. But yeah, I feel like it's gonna be. I would like to say it's gonna be an all rounder, just because its stats are just that good. You know, it's got high attack and high speed,
Mm-hmm.
and its defenses are really good. You know, because it's a legendary Pokemon.
Yeah.
Um, but I could also see it being a speedster. I don't think it's going to be an attacker, just because attackers are all ranged Pokemon. This Pokemon does not. This Pokemon is not a ranged Pokemon. It's like a melee Pokemon that wants to hit them with the sword. Um, it's got to have like a fairy move. It's got to have mobility. Like it's so fast. It needs to have some kind of dash. Um,
Yeah.
like I don't even know what to expect, honestly. Like Sacred Sword, it knows Sacred Sword, so you could just have it ignore defenses or defense changes or
Oh.
shields with Sacred Sword. Iron Head, you know, is its staple move. You know, Iron Head turns into Behemoth Blade when you have the crowned sword attached. Its passive is probably going to be something like crowned sword, you know, where every like you get an attack boost or something every time you do something, or you get like attack raises after doing something specific. I don't know, maybe an inbuilt attack weight or something, just like Dragapult has. Like when you get a KO with someone, you get an attack
Right.
boost. Um, I think it's just going to have really broken abilities, really good stats, really good moves. Like it's a non-evolution Pokemon. So it's gonna be like Lucario in the sense that
Yeah.
it has access to its fully like its full stats right from level one.
Mm-hmm.
Um it's probably gonna have a level 9 Unite move. Like I don't think if you give it a level 8 Unite move, it's over. Like
It's over.
it I probably think it might be a jungler. Or if you run attack weight on it, you can probably put it in lane just because
Yeah,
it's
I
got to
think
have like some kind of good secure, you know, early levels. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like a Pokemon that is too good to be in the game if it does come out that broken.
yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of possibilities, I would say, that could um come out of it. There's a lot of directions that maybe the producers themselves can decide on. I mean, they haven't released a lot of information on it. They probably just were trying to get the initial reaction from the community, and it's kind of been mixed. Like people do expect it to be extremely OP, like what you said, and like I mean, just hearing you describe all of its moves and stuff, and seeing how it was so prominent in the mainline games, yeah, I think I'm starting to be a little bit worried that this is going to be the next OP Pokemon that I don't want to face. Or maybe I should be the one like playing it, you know?
Yeah, I've seen people say that it could be a speedster, because it did have like one of the most. It was probably like one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. But it also has so much power that like I feel like it's a little bit hard to be a speedster when you have that much power.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I guess we'll see what they do with it. Maybe they introduce like a new class. That could be really cool if they introduce a completely new class. Like I don't know. I don't know what they could do with it, but yeah. It also gets moves like Swords Dance, because
Right.
it holds a sword, right? like,
Literally.
um, like I don't know. I honestly don't know what's gonna happen with this character. I just do think it's gonna be quite powerful. I'll be interested to see if they release the Zamazenta as well. Like I
Mm.
think I think it's a little bit hard to just have one Pokemon in the games,
Right?
but who knows? Who knows?
Maybe it's just one of the maybe it's just the more popular one out of the two, unfortunately. and that's how they kind of choose to release it. But I mean, we don't know how they actually decide what Pokemon is going to come out, right? Like Kremlin is like the most random stuff. But okay, anyway, in this case, right? Like since you are like a Pokemon fan, I would assume since you do play VGC and you've started Unite because it was Pokemon, what Pokemon would you like to see in Unite, and also what would you kind of imagine the movesets to be?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, maybe when someone else brought it up, or
Mm-hmm.
when we talked last time. But I would like to see a Pokemon like Gothitelle in the game.
Mm.
So Gothitelle has the ability, I think it's called Shadow Tag. Yeah, Shadow Tag, where like the opposing Pokemon are like locked in and cannot switch out. So if we could see a Pokemon like Gothitelle in the game that limits the range, like it's like a passive or something that limits the range to which your opposing or your enemy Pokemon can like move away from you like for a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that can open like a lot of possibilities. If you're able to like lock people in like a certain radius or like a certain range, I think it could be pretty cool. If you combo with something like Gardevoir or like an AOE Unite move. Um, but then, yeah, I would see it as like a supporter. That's able to
Mm.
support with moves like Hypnosis or something like uh, I don't know, psychic hypnosis. It gets a lot of psychic moves.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a lot of status moves as well. I think it could be a pretty interesting Pokemon for
Right.
Unite. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
then
it.
yeah.
But then.
Well, I mean, there's also other Pokemon, right? Like
Yeah, there's so
yeah,
many.
see, yeah, like Cole's mentioning Trick Room. Like imagine you had like
Oh
Trick
my
Room
gosh.
and like you reverse. I don't know if you would reverse movement speed just because movement speed is pretty standard in this game, but if you could reverse some kind of effect in the game, like maybe I don't know, something to do with status effects, say with Trick Room, or maybe you give it like Magic Room, where like you can't use items, or you can't use like your held items, or like get disabled or something
Yeah.
like that. Could be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, actually that does sound pretty fun, right? It's kind of like silence in some of the
Yeah,
other MOBAs
silence.
as well. It's not something that we have in Unite yet. If they do introduce that, it would be quite good. I mean, like items itself does allow you to make a lot of plays, and being disabled from using those items like is going to make you kind of consider how you position yourself so much more as you did in the past. And like I think that would be, yeah, I do think that that will be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I also think it also gets like a move called Heal Block. So like imagine you use Heal Block, and your opponent can't use any healing moves
Oh,
for
wow,
like the
that's OP.
duration. Like Pokemon like Blissey, Eldegoss, like mine, like their healing just doesn't work. Like the moves don't go off or something like that. Could be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, and like Chad is talking about like all the different kind of possibilities now. It's like Shadow or Mimikyu would be kind of cool to have in Pokemon Unite. Maybe like a substitute as your passive move, right? Like you just don't get hit until like a certain amount of damage. Maybe for Mimikyu, I can't imagine what Shadow would have, but also yeah, Trick Room would be cool. Feel like it's often forgotten. Oh, Magic Room, is that actually a move as well? I'm not
Yeah,
entirely sure.
Magic Room is the move that disables items. So that would be the
Oh, okay.
the concept there. Like you can't use items, I think. I think that's the one. Yeah, I think if Marshadow came into the game, it would be overpowered again because it's a mythical slash legendary. Like it'd just be release broken. Like you have to. Just yeah. I think there's a lot of other Pokemon though. Like, but I do feel like supporters are probably the best Pokemon to release in the game, just because if you release like these attackers and all rounders, a lot of them are just going to be overpowered. Because they have to make them good for people to buy them, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and w- you saying that there should be more supporters in Pokemon Unite is probably going to get on the nerves on everyone who plays defenders, because we haven't had a defender it come out in so long, and Danny Lee is saying it as well. Defenders, please. All the
Well,
defenders main.
if I think about defenders, I'm trying to think like who can they add to the game as a defender? Because defenders really like if you think about defenders, they're mostly either engage or
Mm-hmm.
peel for like your attackers,
Yeah.
right? So you either have an engager or a peeler. I just feel like Snorlax is so good at both of those. Or
Yeah.
I mean, Mr. Mime's a supporter, but um, I don't know. Defenders are a weird one. Like they've released defenders, but the defenders don't actually play like defenders. Like
Right.
Blastoise is a defender, but he was like
Nah.
overpowered as an attacker. Greedent
Yeah.
is a defender, but he was like overpowered as like a hybrid speedster all rounder almost.
Yeah.
He just did too much damage. I
Yeah,
don't
and then
know.
there's
I don't know.
and then there's like Greedent, who is, why is he a defender as well? I'm not entirely sure. Mammal as well. I think Mammal, does Mammal fit the
Mam-
bill of a defender?
Mamoswine in the main games, he's got like high attack and high HP, but like his ability, thick fat, I think is what makes him a
Mm,
defender, right? Like the way they've introduced it in this game, they made him tanky and given him thick fat. So I can see that, like defenders, yeah.
yeah,
I don't
good
know.
good
I don't know.
good I think suggestions from chat as well. Torterra as well as Ferrothorn, I think. Would be quite interesting to see Ferrothorn, I feel. It has its part in VGC
Like
a little bit as well.
I can see Cole has mentioned like traps and hazards. So like
Tips and
we have
hazards.
Crustle who has like
All
stealth
right.
rock. Um I could see something like toxic spikes
Oh right. Oh my gosh.
or maybe like something like Glamora,
Oh
Glamora
yeah.
is a new Pokemon in the game. If you introduce Glamora as a defender, you can put down toxic spikes or like something like Toxapex. Um
Mm.
He's got like defensive moves. He's got his like special ability. I forgot what it's called. Baneful something bunker. Like it's like a protect kind of move. Maybe if you get hit by baneful bunker, you get poisoned and it does like damage over time. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of like I don't know. Shuckle. Shuckle could be one,
Tackle.
or like Felix. We already have Regirock in the game. I'm not gonna say him.
Yeah.
We've got Slowbro. Um, there's a lot of Pokemon you can put in as defenders, but yeah, I think Toxapex, maybe like Metagross or something could be some solid defenders. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We shall show the defender players some love, and say that we are suggesting to them the Pokemon that should come in as defenders if Pokemon needs more suggestions for who they should bring in to unite. And yeah, I think that was really informative. All the information that you were sharing. Is there any last things you want to say to the general Unite community before we maybe end off this podcast and then go towards looking at the games, the ACL games that were happening, and kind of like cast them together as well?
Yeah. No, it's been really fun. I think Deoxys Defense, another defender. The Deoxys Defense form. That
Oh
could be pretty cool.
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's gonna be
Uh,
another OP Pokemon with so many forms. It can be all types. Can you imagine?
yeah.
Oh god.
Imagine if you could like pick your form based on I don't know, like I don't know if you've seen like Super Smash Bros. There's a character called Shulk where you can like cycle through the forms.
Right.
Um, yeah, Deoxys could maybe be a Pokemon that you add to the game, and you can cycle through like your different forms, on a cooldown. Yeah, I don't know. But in terms of like the last things, I mean, I guess I'm looking forward to competing in the UCS this season. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be good competition. Excited to see like how different metas progress. I'll be keeping my eye on like NA, EU, Japan. The ACL is a really good tool to like see what the
Mm-hmm.
top teams are going to be playing in that region. But yeah, I'm just interested to see like how OCE shapes out. Come March.
Yep. I think I'm really excited to see what OCE has for us as well. I mean, we have so much broadcast right now on NAEU, even APEC. Yeah, I just can't wait to see what you guys put out. And of course, your team as well that you haven't revealed to us yet.
I'll give
But
you the
we'll
team name. I'll
yeah.
give you the team name.
Oh, we have a team
So
name.
the team name. All right. We're called the Juicy Bulbs. We the Juicy Bulbs. We like Bulbasaur a lot. He's got a juicy bulb. Hence the hair
Right.
cross.
I
Hair cross likes the
see.
bulbs as well.
I see now. I see where the GIF came from now with this name. But okay, we're
Yeah,
definitely
you
gonna
see,
keep it in mind. Keep the juicy bulb in mind.
the juicy bulbs. Yeah, I guess we'll do like a Twitter post or something at some point. Yeah, maybe today, tomorrow, something like that.
Today. Okay, maybe. We'll definitely keep a lookout for that. For now we're gonna go for a short break, but we will be back. Thank you so much, Taco Bro, for the raid. We are gonna go for a short break first, but we will be back in maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will be casting some games. Yep.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. See you guys in a while.